We provide housing for mothers who are coming out of prison, either from the prison nursery, and there's a prison nursery at Bedford Hills Correctional, and there's a prison nursery at Rikers Island, Rose M. Singer, or mothers reuniting with children in foster care or family care. That pretty much sums up what we do. But I think it's important, especially after listening and looking at all the statistics, that we almost need, and I'm not going to do it, but I suggest at some point we have it, a Prison 101, because we all talk about the systems that we work in. And if you have really never worked in a prison system, you would realize that when we call these women justice related, they're hardly justice related. It's really unjust. And the women who come out of prison come out with the collateral damage of experiencing, yes, they did commit a crime and they do their time and all the other lingo things we say, but the trauma that they've experienced inside is just, takes years to work off. Never mind the fact that most of the women who were in there before had a lot of other negative experiences between, the poverty, lack of this, and trauma and violence. So that my best advocacy is for you to get on board with straightening out our unjust prison system. So that's my initial comment, all right? After that, I could keep quiet. But the facts frame the issues here, I think. The numbers are there. Certainly, we've seen a drop over the past few years of the state numbers. Currently, I think 2,500 in state prison. Rose M. Singer, the women's jail on Rikers Island, has capacity for about 2,000. And yet, they say like 11,000 women pass through the doors of Rikers Island every year. So that in itself is another issue in terms of justice-related women, those facts. 80% of women incarcerated anywhere in New York State or the system basically are mothers, and that's a very important factor. Also, it said 80% of them go home to families. Now again, that's because when you're inside the prison, when you're getting ready to parole out, the biggest thing you need is a place to go. And at that point in time, the anxiety is so important to get out, go before the parole board, to get an address. And they could care less where it is, as long as it's approved. And who approves that, and whose couch is it, or whose second bed in the bedroom it is, doesn't really matter at that point, because there really is no great discharge planning within the prison system. It's really, and you can imagine, you've been in prison a few, you just want to get out that door, and where you go isn't important. So that so often, because of poor planning inside, women who end up with families most often end up back in the shelter system, because the welcome wears out after the second week of helping with Metro cards or getting diapers for a baby or whatever. So that's another fact to be considered in this big picture. So where are we in our children? It was mentioned by Ann that we started out working with children, caring for children whose mothers were in prison. It was a great experience. One taught me more than I could even begin to tell you. But it became very evident when we take the babies up, or the children up, to visit the mothers, that the mothers had fewer and fewer places to go home to. And if we were investing in the lives of these kids, we wanted to make sure that when the mother came out, they had the ideal spot to reunite and grow a life. So that's really where our children was born. Why not open a house for mothers where, again, we did it very conveniently on the same street, and I might add, it's all the literature's back there to read about who we are and where we are. We're Queens-based, which is an unusual thing because sometimes in prison they'll have to say, where is Queens? But anyway, we're Queens-based, but we work with women all over New York State. But when we had this one house in Long Island City, and that was before it became the place to be, all the gentrification of Long Island City. It was crime-ridden when I went there, and I loved it. But now it's hot. But when we went there, we had a house on one side of the block, and we got the house on the other side of the block so that the children's lives would not be disrupted. And that really started us in the world of housing for mothers and the mission that is Our Children Now. To date, we have 40, and again, we've grown. We've had 40 to 50 spots for mothers who come out, and we have that in 4 sites in Queens. And again, one of our biggest beliefs, and I say this again after 27, I think I have the right to say it, after 27 years of working, a mother should not, a woman, especially who's a mother, should not come out of prison and go into permanent housing. Bad idea. Secondly, a mother who comes out, especially with a woman with children, if she's reuniting with them or if she has a baby in her arms from the prison nursery, needs communal transitional housing. And that's the model that we have grown to do, and we currently have, as I said, 40 to 50 beds in 4 different sites for that particular model, and we think that works. Then, of course, why am I sitting at this supportive housing network is at the end of the rainbow, when they've done, and I'm going to give some of the reasons, the issues they have to deal with before getting ready, where do they go? And if anything in this conference, the words are not enough supportive housing. Can you say that? Not enough supportive housing for anybody, never mind the women that I work with. And I'd just like a quick review, and Ann just flagged me down because I can really go on and on. Permanent housing is critical, and we currently have, our children has 2 permanent sites for 14 units. Thanks be to God, in the September of 2013, we'll be opening an 18 units of 2 and 3 bedroom apartments for our families. And again, to say 2 and 3 bedroom apartments in the supportive housing network, or even in the housing network of New York, is like revolutionary. Because some people who are in powers that be think that a mother and a child would do fine in a little studio. That's not going to work. So we're very happy about the funding and the supportive housing that we're going to open in the end. So will bring us up to about 32 units. Not enough, but that's where we are. Let me just go through it quickly, and again, Georgia referred to a few of the reasons why we believe supportive housing, the idea of transitional communal living, is critical to this population. Lack of life experiences, and all the reasons that come to play here. People say, again, the other catchphrase, give people a second chance. We're not about second chances. We're about first ones. Because most of the women who come to live in the Our Children world, and they don't come there if they have family who's clamoring to get them, to take them in, have very little real life experiences. And that impacts their vision, their sense of self-worth, all the things that we can talk about. And they're looking at life clean and sober for the first time in years for many instances. So the lack of life experience, they need time. And that's the biggest thing that I say we give you. When people walk in the door, they'll give you the time you need to work all through your issues. Because again, somebody could walk in the door who's up here really ready to go, needs 6 months' time. Some other woman comes in with 3 kids, she's got to get them out of foster care, and she's got to navigate all the other systems that were mentioned, and she'll need more time. So again, we like to treat people individually, and that's pretty much what our model has been. Lack of life skills, I can't emphasize this enough. The things that you and I take for granted, and again, I can speak with real clarity on this because for the past 27 years, I lived in one of the homes with the women. So when they come down and they realize, don't even know some of them what a freeze is about, and I think it's a revolutionary idea to freeze bread so that you might have it for a week down the road. It's the small things in life that you and I take for granted. And that's where we have to start with women. And the best teachers are the peers. I don't have anybody standing in the kitchen saying, you do this, you do that. The women help each other in the house. And they're the best teachers because they've been there. And we have staff who model it, but it's really the staff working with the women. And at this point in time, we have about 20 of our staff are our former clients. Best teachers, best teachers. They've been there. I'm not the expert, they are. So the lack of life skills is there. Routine is the hardest thing for some women. Again, they come out of prison, they're told what to do, to think almost, to walk, what path they can go on. They have to learn how to choose and make mistakes, establish their own routine in life. Make sure they get to parole on time. Make sure they get to the outpatient drug treatment that's not on site. They've got to get from here to there. And do all those things that really will strengthen them to be good women as well as good parents. The child-related issues around women coming out of prison is another whole topic. Navigating a court system that's not woman-friendly, especially if you've had a conviction. It's there. They need help. They need support. They need people to go with them and talk to the issues. The other thing is very often family. If a child is with a family member, sometimes it's harder to get that child out of that family and back to reunification, because there's all kinds of other issues, bridges that have been burned and stigmas and opinions, etc. So, but that's got to work. Education, again, a big area. On the books, it said no one will come out of New York State prison without a GED. Guess what? They do. And again, you look at some of the commitment of funding inside prisons to education is awful. The whole issue of college programs wiped out by the Pataki years. That Pell Grants were not something that women, the only in prison, men and women in prison should have. You know, an 8th grade education was good enough. I mean, this is the mentality that we're working with, and they're coming out to a world that is certainly fast-paced, and they're behind the 8 ball. They need the education because, again, employment is the big thing. Ex-con. No one will convince me that's changed, because I hear and I see the trauma of women going out time after time to all of these places that supposedly are, you know, people-friendly, women-friendly, and they come back. So they need people. And we have people on staff, former ex-offenders. Okay, I knew she was going to do that. All right, I'll go for money-related issues. Somebody's got to deal with it. The debt, the credit, they have no idea how to manage. They have a child they reunite with. He's 10 years old, and he wants $150 Nike sneakers, and out of guilt, some mother is going to go buy them. So it's all those little tiny things that can really sell a woman down the drain. Relational issues is my last one, as well as health. Relational things are the biggest issue our women have to deal with. Their own selves, and excuse me, but men. And again, incredible thing they have to work, we help people work through. And I love that when they come home and introduce me to someone, I say, oh, where did you meet him? I met him last week on the subway. You know what I mean? It's those types of issues that have to be looked at, because it can make or break a family. That's the end of my story. The last thing is, when they do all this and work through all these, where do they go? They're not going to public housing because they cannot go there. So very often, they'll go 2 to 2 in a permanent apartment. But again, I said the words not enough, and that's what I'm ending. There's not enough resources that are really geared to helping this my women, I call them, our women, and also for permanent housing. So I welcome questions and conversation after this. Thank you.